Live from First Street Studios in South Tampa, Florida. It's time for another round of Last Call. All right, we are back, and now in just a couple hours from now, we're going to have a main event in UFC 294. A lot going on. We take this back to the coronavirus when the UFC created this fight island deal in Abu Dhabi.
Yep.
And now they're back in Abu Dhabi. So if you don't know, you're not going to necessarily see this show until it's over. But hopefully you guys realize that it starts at 2, the main card. It doesn't start at 10 o'clock tonight. But anyway, what I think that's so interesting about this card, there was a lot of fall-offs, a lot of fights that broke. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know how they were going to hold it together. So, but now the card is better than the card was originally stated. I mean, we got two of the biggest fights, I think, potentially of the first part of this year that's already gone on because two guys decided to be company men that people talk about all the time. And I'm sure the payoff in the stipends they're going to get for doing this is astronomical. And we'll have to see when the reports come out. But how cool is it for Usman, a former champion, and Volkanovski to jump in those spots, former champions, putting basically their careers and loss records on the line to do this for the UFC, to make this card happen in Abu Dhabi? I mean, what do you think about it? I think that's amazing.
I want to backpedal real quick. You sure we can't make picks? Because look, then we're going to look like swamis when we get it right. And we all remember Jimmy the Greek. I mean, if we predict it and it winds up being truthful, they don't need to know that we didn't watch in advance and broke this down, right?
No, we're going to break it down.
He says, baby.
Yeah, we're gonna do our picks.
But to answer your question, though, it's especially big for Usman because he's coming off back-to-back losses.
Yes.
He had a devastating knockout loss against Rocky Edwards, and then he lost a rematch, was pretty heavily dominated. Now, he is moving up to 185 pounds, and Usman is a bigger 170er. So maybe over the years, all that weight cutting took its toll on him. He is going up against an absolute machine, though, in Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, that guy is the next big thing in the UFC. He's been the next big thing for a few years. I mean, he goes out there and just blitzkriegs everybody. But we both can admit, with apologies to Gilbert Burns, who is a stud, this is the biggest fight of Khamzat's career. It's sink or swim. He's fighting not only a former champion, a former pound-for-pound 1-2 in the rankings, but you're talking perhaps, sorry, George St. Pierre, nothing but love for you, maybe the best 170-pounder that this sport has ever seen.
Especially maintaining it for so long. I mean, Trevor Whitman's done a great job with it.
Absolutely. You know Trevor quite well.
I do.
There's something about that camp. And, Usman, I remember watching him on The Ultimate Fighter. He came up as a bare bones wrestler, your typical All-American, take you down and lay and pray, for lack of a better term, which works. People hate that in MMA, but listen, you make your bread and butter, you roll with it, but he's become a complete fighter. Now, again, we talked about this in a previous video, Dan. Your chips are against a wall. Usman is in a position he's not used to being in. He dominated for so long, but he's lost his last two in devastating fashion. He got that devastating knockout, and then he was just completely dominated.
Yes.
You cannot come into a fight against a machine like Khamzat, who is absolutely looking at this as though, look, this is my Game 7 of the World Series, Dan. This is my Super Bowl. This is my Stanley Cup. This is my Last Call 76 hosting gig,
Yeah.
And he's looking to knock Usman's head off. And to me, this is a step forward for him because he wants this fight. He wants this competition to prove I'm next. Put me up against whoever's a champ at 185. Put me up against whoever's a champ at 170. I'm going to take them all on.
No, it's true. And when you think about the game plan with Usman for this fight, he didn't have a lot of time.
No.
But sometimes that's better, because then you're not thinking so much about the loss. After the Masvidal, knockout, it was like, boom, right? Everybody's like, this is the best fighter in the world, right? Or Usman, Great game plan from Trevor, right? But then now you come off a loss, and now you're going in against the best prospect probably in a long time at that weight. Yeah. So if Usman puts a good game plan together, it sits on his punches, wrestles heavy, you understand, but we don't know how that's going to look. But he's going to have to slow the fight down because it's going to be an aggressive fight. And he's coming at him, and he's not going to stop. Everybody knows what he's like. So Usman has to have a perfect game plan. It has to be precise. It has to be good counter striking. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bad night for him.
It's going to be a bloodbath. And hey, I'm just going to say this. Check out the video above when we talked about somebody that has nothing to lose. Right now, Usman absolutely has nothing to lose here.
This doesn't hurt him one way or the other.
He's taking it on short notice. He's taking it in a weight class above what he's used to. And let's be realistic. Everybody thinks he's the sacrificial lamb here. To me, Dan, like I said about Baker Mayfield, again, check the video above. When you have your back against a wall and you've got nothing to lose, you are the most dangerous person in MMA.
That's what I'm getting at. So right now, it's a win-win either way. He's doing something good for the company. He's getting himself back out there. He's testing himself to see how he's improved after his losses. And this could be another breakout and then another title run.
Absolutely.
But even if he loses, now he knows what he has to work on his next full camp, right?
Sure.
But let's move in to Volk. Because this fight's very interesting to me. The last one was pretty much
razor thin. Could have gone either way.
I think so too. And I don't know how this one plays out. We know Volk's cardio is going to be amazing. Mm-hmm. But at the weigh-ins, little plug there from the UFC, little Hezbollah up on the stage as usual, right? So
no comment.
But at the point of this fight, it's what needs to happen right now, because Volk's kind of wiped through the competition, already at 45. Mm-hmm. So at 55, if he's ever going to be a double belt holder, then he's got to start fighting the top and the cream of the crop. What do you think?
All right, so I got two questions for you here, piggybacking off of that. Number one, we talked about Usman really having nothing to lose here. Can you say the same about Volk, though? Because he stepped up in competition, he stepped up in a weight class, lost a razor-close decision the last time they fought. Fight of the year. We know this is going to be fireworks. But if he loses again, yes, he's got that comfort level at 145 pounds. That belt is his. But let's be honest, Dan, you said it best. You alluded to it. He has run through that division. Who's left? Who is left for him to face that he hasn't beat once, twice? Heck, in the case of Max Holloway, 3 times. There's really getting to the point to where the competition is getting thin. So how much more is he going to do at 145 pounds if he doesn't win this fight? So it is, to me, a little bit of a crossroads for him. Now, secondly, I want to follow up about these super fights, because circumstances like this, you can make an argument for. Makhachev is pretty much ruled the roost at 155 pounds. He's ran through everybody. Volk has run through everybody at 145 pounds. This, to me, okay, it makes sense. But in so many other circumstances, you will see these divisions tied up where we will get these super fights, which are great. They're entertaining. They're buy rates. We love the champ versus champ. But is it necessarily good for the divisions to tie them up for so long while the champ steps up in weight?
I think you're onto something, because when Adesanya checked up to be a company man, he lost.
Right.
And he's lost quite a bit after that now.
He's not the same.
He's not the same. So I don't know if taking that risk and taking a loss when you're essentially, what's the word I'm looking for? Unbeatable. And then you get beat. What does it do to the psyche and the mental? Or are you just now at this point, I've already achieved the championship level? The dual belt holders, there's several of them now, when it once upon a time it was only one.
Right.
Now we got Nunez, and now we have McGregor.
Right.
And now we got some other guys trying to do it as well. So I don't know. I think it's good for the sport when there is a lag in the divisions at 45, 55, at 70. And the super fights are cool.
Right.
But if you remember, it was an anomaly back in the UFC for years. You would never really do it. But now it's kind of becoming practice. Because is it just because there's a gap? Or is it because of injuries and other things? So anyway, but what are your predictions?
Well, I'm going to throw it back to real quick.
Okay,
Get my prediction. Throw it back real quick. I remember BJ Penn versus George St. Pierre.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. And I just want to give you credit for what you said there. Man, it is the norm now, because back when we saw GSP and BJ, oh my God, we're seeing BJ, who's a king of 155. We're seeing George, who is a king of 170. We know BJ can step up at 170. He did it back before the Stone Ages happened in MMA, when he beat Matt Hughes to win that belt and then vacated it. But I'm with you 100%. I think, it's fun to watch, but it gets to the point where it makes the division very it's tough because how can you take these challengers viable when this champ's stepping up and, fighting for another belt? But to give my predictions here, well, then I'm going to kick you about this Makhachev thing, that Volkanovski, whether or not he has something to lose. But, man, I want to piggyback off that. I think he is so hungry. I think he was so close to winning last time. And I think he's going to come in here and do things a little bit differently this time. He knows what Makhachev's going to do. He's going to try to take it down Khabib style and grind and grind and grind. And I think he's going to keep his distance, use that length, use that striking, and steal a win. Now, Usman, I'm going to call it here crazy, and I'm going to probably sound like a fool. Wouldn't be the first time. Won't be the last. My wife says I'm a fool every day. Mm-hmm. He's got nothing to lose.
No.
This is his big spotlight. Now, I know Khamzat has been the killing machine. He's stepping up, man. He's stepping up. Usman's been there. Yeah, he's lost his last two. Guess what? Nobody's Teflon in this sport. Everybody meets their maker. But I think he realizes his back is against the wall. It's now or it's never. A win here, guess what? He's in line for 185 pounds. Loss here, where does he go? And I think the most dangerous fighter in the world, what I said earlier, Dan, is the one that has nothing to lose.
And a short time to think about it.
Exactly, which makes him even more dangerous.
Yeah,
because how do you prepare for that?
Well, so I used to always say that is when you get a guy that gets put in like a second string quarterback or a second string running back, you have nothing to lose, right? This is your time to shine. Usman's already been a champion, so he leaves the sport as a champion, if that makes sense. He's a Hall of Famer. Well, like you said, arguably the best 170 ever.
Right.
So he has nothing to lose now. If anything, what we have to make sure we protect though with him, I hope the UFC, what I mean by that is we don't want him to go out on a 5-loss skid either. So, but this is a good fight for right now.
Right.
So I'm going to go with Usman because I think Usman and Whitman will have a game plan that'll take him off of his game. And I'm going to go with Volk because it was so narrowly close last time and Volk doesn't like to lose. No. So the cardio will be exceptional. The cardio will be great. The wrestling takedown defense will be amazing. And I think once you do that, and we've seen it with the Gilbert fight, that if you can gas this guy out, and I think Usman can do it.
Oh, yeah.
I really do. So those are my predictions. I'm going Usman and Volkanovski.
Absolutely. And we're on the same page here. We're on the same page now.
I just think it could happen.
My last question for this one then, and we're going to circle back here real quick to your thoughts, what I mentioned earlier about Volk. I mentioned Usman has everything to lose. Or does he? Do you feel the same about Volk here?
No, I don't. I think he's a company man. I think he's well loved. So think about American fighters. They have like a state behind them. Yep. This guy's got a country behind him. Just like I was talking about Adesanya.
Yeah.
They're not losing no popularity. It's just like when Conor comes back, the whole country's going to be behind him for what they've already done.
Right.
So they've already done. They're already Hall of Famers. That's my point. Adesanya, Volk, as well as, help me out, Usman is absolutely in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. So what they're doing right now is company business, I call it. They're helping create cards that fell apart due to injuries and whatever, contractual issues or whatever, or visas, right? But the right thing to do is to do this for the company because this is what the fan base wants. This is why the fan base stayed with you and grew so much when Abu Dhabi during coronavirus. Mm-hmm. So, and that was the only place to go to Fight Island. So of course they don't lose.
Right.
And they're going to make a lot of money. And they're going to get the good Venom money. They're going to get the good, kickbacks and everything else. Could be a fight of the night. Could be a knockout of the night. Submission. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I'm excited for it. I think everybody worked together on this from the, the guys who plan these fights, right? The matchmakers, they fell apart. They were able to get everybody to agree. And this is hard to do, and you know that.
Yeah.
To make this card to 294 to happen, this took a lot of sacrifice. It took a lot of short notice. It took like really cuts. I bet Volk had to make a cut. Right. Usman had to make a cut. So everybody did the right thing for this, for the good of the sport. That's my opinion on it, but we got to wrap it up. But you got anything final?
2 final thoughts here before I call it. Let's be honest. How often is it that you see a fight card completely fall apart and the fights they replace them with are better? That's I mean, usually I like to use the term El Caca Grande. Usually the replacement fights are El Caca Grande. It's one body you throw in there to get beat up. These are better fights, Dan. And I'm going to close out with one more thing here. There's one thing I think Usman has going here, and there's one thing I think Volk has. They're the best at their division. They're the GOATs of all time, but champ. What separated John Jones, despite all the off the octagon issues? What separated Conor? What took them to that next level? Multiple belts and multiple divisions.
Absolutely.
That's where I think they're both dangerous here.
And they're very dangerous. And the last thing I'll say, and we're going to close off on this, but it's also Dana wants to see it too, because these are his fighters. And I mean, and they make the company a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And so why wouldn't you do it at this time? I know you put the other fighters in the division on the seat or on the bench or on the shelf, but for this, it wasn't intentional.
No.
That's why I think it's good. So we'll be back. Thank you.
Last call mailbag. Another week, another fantastic question. This one's local, Dan. I love this question. It's talking about the Bucks. I'm not talking to Milwaukee Bucks either. I'm talking to Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Of course you are.
Of course. Why would I be talking about the Milwaukee Bucks here in Tampa? So there's somebody out there that listening. Well, he's talking Milwaukee. And of course, I'm talking Tampa. All right. This coming from Derek. Derek wants to know, buy or sell? One stays forever, one goes away. Brad Johnson, Vinny Testaverde.
Oh, wow. Where did that come from?
That's a diehard Bucks fan right there.
Okay, so I will say this, though, as a Bucks fan, but also as a Hurricane fan, back when Vinny Testaverde played there, drafted in number 1, of course our team wasn't that great then. He's not the only one that failed as a draft pick there and went on later on, not so much with Vinny, but other players like we talked about in other episodes before, Steve Young's, Doug Williams. Okay, so we've had some players. I will say this, Brad Johnson, because he won a championship. Period. Filled in for Trent Dilfer when Dilfer went, and then ironically a year later they win a championship, right? Kind of a weird set or scenario, but you always go with the champion. Now, do I think Vinny Testaverde was a better quarterback than Brad Johnson? 150%. Played in the toughest college division at that time there was. So I would have to go Brad Johnson as far as a Bucks fan. But as far as a college fan, watching the University of Miami, the U, I'm going with Vinny. What do you think?
So there you hear it, folks. He's picking Brad to stay with the Bucks, but he's kicking Vinny for you. Listen, man.
I'm just speaking factual.
Speaking factual, right. And that's like, you brought up a good point. Brad wasn't even a starter for that Bucks team. He got in by circumstance and won the Super Bowl, but he led Tampa to their first ever Super Bowl, which something we never thought we would see.
Perhaps not.
Back then. Now we take it for granted. But back then, look, we had all those teams of Tony Dungy that were close but no cigar.
Right.
Brad was the quarterback that led them over the hump. Now, granted, did it take a whole lot of mastery for him to win that Super Bowl with that defense? Probably not, but he was the Super Bowl winning quarterback.
He's like Trey Dilfer, control the game.
Nick Foles, I love Foles, but if you want statistics, you put Vinny on that team, I see they win it. I think you put Vinny on that team, they win 2 or 3.
Perhaps.
Because Vinny was a lot better than people realize.
Yeah, and then he went to other teams that weren't so good. So, it always comes back to the point of right situation, right time. Right. And we talk about it all the time. So that's all I got on that. I mean, I can't go no deeper with that.
That's as deep as I can go. Like I said, if you had to ask me to pick which quarterback I'd rather have for the Buccaneers, Testaverde historically, but I can't turn that Super Bowl way. So I'm going to go with Brad.
All right. Okay. Are we good?
We are now, ladies and gentlemen. We're always good here on Last Call 76. More mailbag next week.
It's good, Keith.